story of Uday the Dullard, a measure of rice. Once upon a time in the sacred grounds of Jetavana, the teacher gathered his disciples for an important lesson. This was a tale about the elder Uday, also known as Uday the Dullard. The event took place when Daba, the wise Malayan monk, served as the steward to the Sangha, managing the daily allotments of rice. Every morning, Daba would hand out checks for rice, carefully balancing between the best and the inferior quality grains. One day, Uday, receiving a check for lesser quality rice, grew agitated. Is Daba the only one who knows how to hand out rice checks? Don't we know just as well? He complained loudly, stirring a commotion in the check room. His protest grew so disruptive that the other monks decided to humor him. Here, they said, handing him the check basket. If you think you can do better, distribute the checks yourself. Pleased with his new role, Uday took over the responsibility, confident he could handle it. But he had no understanding of how to distinguish the finest rice from the inferior, or which monks, based on their seniority, deserved the best portions. Clueless, he marked random spots on the wall to designate where each group of monks should stand. His method was hopelessly flawed, and the next day, the marks were all wrong. Still, Uday stubbornly clung to his system. The monks tried to reason with him, explaining, "Friend Uday, these marks are incorrect. The best rice should go to the more senior monks, while the inferior rice goes to the juniors." But Uday refused to listen. "If my mark is here, that's where you should be standing. Why should I trust you over my mark?" Frustrated, the younger monks and novices pushed Uday out of the check room. "Uday the Dullard," they cried. "You've shorted us all. You're not fit for this task. Get out!" A great commotion erupted. Hearing the noise, the teacher, who was nearby, asked Ananda, his devoted attendant, "What is all this noise about?" Ananda explained the whole incident. With a knowing smile, the teacher said, "This is not the first time Uday's ignorance has caused trouble. He did the same in a past life." The monks were curious, and Ananda requested the teacher to share this story from a bygone era. The Tale from the Past. Long ago in the kingdom of Benares, King Brahmadatta reigned. At that time I was born as the king's valuer. It was my duty to determine the worth of treasures, animals, and goods, horses, elephants, gold, jewels, and ensure the owners were paid their fair value. But the king was greedy and became concerned that my precise evaluations were diminishing his wealth. So he decided to replace me. He looked out his window and spotted a foolish, greedy man walking through the courtyard. Seeing a perfect candidate to protect his riches, the king appointed this man as the new royal valuer. This new valuer had no sense of true worth. Instead, he assigned prices based solely on his whims. Soon after, a horse dealer arrived in Benares with 500 magnificent horses. The king summoned his new valuer to assess their worth. Without hesitation, the fool declared, "These 500 horses are worth 1 measure of rice." The dealer, stunned by the absurd evaluation, went to seek my advice. "What should I do?" he asked. I advised him to give the new valuer a bribe, and then, in front of the king, ask him, "If 500 horses are worth a measure of rice, then what is the value of a single measure of rice?" Following my counsel, the dealer bribed the valuer and asked the question. The fool confidently replied, "Yes, I can value a measure of rice." And the dealer immediately brought him before the king. I, too, went along with other ministers. In the presence of the king, the dealer said, "Your Majesty, I accept that the price of my 500 horses is 1 measure of rice. However, I wish to ask the valuer to explain the precise value of that measure of rice." The king, unaware of the trick, turned to his valuer and asked, "What are 500 horses worth?" "A measure of rice, sire," the fool answered. "Very well," said the king. "If 500 horses are worth a measure of rice, then what is that measure of rice worth?" Puffing up with pride, the fool replied, "It is worth all of Benares and its suburbs." The ministers couldn't help but laugh. They clapped their hands in disbelief. "We used to think the kingdom was priceless, but now we learn that all of Benares is worth only a measure of rice. What an extraordinary valuer!" Realizing his mistake, the king dismissed the fool from his post, and I was reinstated as the royal valuer. The teacher then concluded the story, linking the past to the present. Just as Uday was the foolish valuer in that life, he remains the same dullard today. And as I was the wise valuer then, I am once again the one who sees clearly. Thus, the lesson was complete. Through the story of the foolish Udayi and the king's misguided greed, the monks learned the importance of wisdom, fairness, and the folly of trusting one's position to the unwise. And so, the assembly understood the deeper meaning behind the teacher's words. Thus, the lesson was complete. Through the story of the foolish Udayi and the king's misguided greed, the monks learned the importance of wisdom, fairness, and the folly of trusting one's position to the unwise. And so, the assembly understood the deeper meaning behind the teacher's words.